Oof. This is heavy. This is don't want to talk about it territory. The fear is that I am alone in this, and I am just expressing my own neurosis and issues. And I guess that's what I'm quite frequently doing in these journals, whether I like it or not. Why do I find any sense of peace in the idea that other people also have these issues? Like, why would I wish that upon anybody? I guess issues aren't negative for a start. This is just imbalances that I need to learn from and move through so that I can be more free. And maybe it's just like sometimes getting resentful and frustrated with situations and people because you're finally seeing, or I feel like I'm finally seeing how I fucked it up in the past, like what I was doing, like I'm being shown like the theatre of the universe. Look, this is you. This person's going to play you in the past now so that you can see very clearly how you sabotaged yourself and pushed away possibility. Seems to be, I get a lot of that kind of learning in life, where like what I just described, people that I'll come into contact with in the future, once I feel like I've learned my lesson and I've stopped doing something, or I'm like trying to change, then it's almost like on cue the theatre will begin and I'll be shown like, this is you, this is what you were doing, this is how it feels for other people when you were behaving that way. And then all of a sudden it's like, that is how I complete the lesson of life. Okay, so now I've experienced that, and now I'm positive that I don't want to reproduce that anymore. But what do I do about it if so, okay, here it is. This is the real issue here. This is what the video journal's about. So, because I've totally detached from pretty much everyone and everything and gone on a very solo journey, it's been easy for people to come and go and play those roles in the theatre of life so that I can see these things. But it isn't a sustainable way to live, or it isn't a sustainable way that I'd like to live and relate to others. So what do I do? Like, how do I describe this? It's very metaphorical, it's not going to be literal at all, but it's like, so somebody will come in, the theatre will begin, and I will see how I was behaving in the past, and then I'll understand more deeply like why I don't want to be like that anymore. But then I kind of fire the actor, like, because I've seen the thing that I don't want to be in somebody else, so it's like I also don't want to see you anymore. Even though that's not who they are, that's just something that I've observed in their behavior or their way that they're presenting, and I'm learning something from it. Like, I just want to stop pushing, like stop discarding relationships, really. Wow, okay. Because they represent something inside myself that I don't want to be anymore. So maybe my question to myself is, can I continue a friendship, a relationship, a business partnership with somebody after the theatre is over and I've learned my lesson? Because if I've really learned my lesson, I've made the conscious decision that I don't want to behave that way anymore or create that for myself anymore, then it shouldn't affect me that somebody else is. If the theatre continues and that person needs to learn a similar lesson, or maybe they don't even have to learn a similar lesson because for them it's not an issue, that's a choice, like, or it just is, it's not a priority situation that needs any awareness brought to it. Maybe they've got other things that they prioritize above understanding that particular thing that's playing out. So what did I say this video is about? Like, I want to continue. I don't want to be isolated anymore. There's so much distance between me and everybody else that I'm connected to. Because it feels like I'm trying to think of an excuse. I don't want to think of an excuse, I just want to change it. So this is what I'm seeing. Like, I just need to feel the feelings, acknowledge what I'm learning, acknowledge what I've observed, and then continue. Like, don't, because I'm rejecting the old version of myself as it's showing up in another person. I don't want to reject the other person, because it has nothing to do with them. And it could just be a temporary thing too. The nature of life is it's constantly evolving and changing, so it could even be like a positive, healthy thing. Like, who knows what role I'm stepping into for these other people that I'm interacting with in the theatre of life. What behaviours am I exhibiting? What things am I reminding them of? Like, what's being triggered off as a result of my presence? Like, what are they now, what's surfacing in them that they're now realizing that they need to deal with? Like, isn't this positive? Isn't this what growth is all about? Although, did have a discussion last night about the kind of envy that many of us have felt at some point, where we look at people who are just complacent and they've just found their spot, they've perched and they're done. Like, it's not about growth or resolving your issues or dealing with your trauma or any of that. It's just, you know, really simple lifestyle. This is working for me. I'm just going to chill and live my life. I'm not going to stress about self-improvement, personal development, any of these things. And I can sit on both sides of that debate. Like, I can go like, yeah, personal development and constantly trying to better yourself and deal with your trauma. Maybe it's not the best use of your time if you can just find some kind of pleasure and fulfillment without going through all of that suffering. But like, I can sit on the other side and be like, well, my life has just exponentially improved as a result of the work that I have done, and I wouldn't have known that had I perched somewhere comfortable and just chilled out for the rest of my life, and I would have had like a fraction of the joy and wonder that is actually possible. But then I can go back to the other side of the argument and say, ignorance is bliss. I wouldn't have known what I was missing out on, because you can't compare your life and your experience to something that you've never experienced. So yeah, you can go back and forward all day, and that's quite often what happens when you're sitting around a group and discussing that kind of thing. Yeah, we're all probably constantly in these roles in the theatre of life, showing each other what we do and do not want. And I guess what's surfacing now that's slightly related is some people are like very deliberate in their theatrical roles, and they're showing you something that isn't necessarily real. And that's another thing that I've been frustrated with lately. Like people, and it's probably an insecurity, but people who are performing in the theatre of life and everybody's looking at them like, that is what I do, and that's where that idealizing, like fairy tale life thing comes in, where people are like, I want to be like such and such, or I want that picture perfect relationship, or I want that picture perfect career, or I want all these like material things in my life, or not even material things, like even spiritual, quote unquote spiritual attainments, like being more loving, or being more enlightened is like one of my least favorite words, or being more present. Like being more present is like something that like I constantly see these people in the theatre of life playing the role, like they're going out on stage in company and they're playing the role of somebody who's very present and compassionate and loving and full of light, and then, you know, that's not real. That's just like, so I wonder how the theatre of life shows them what they're doing. Like, do they then have to meet others who present an illusion that falls apart over and over again until they see inside themselves that they were presenting the illusion? I think I've even done that. I think I've been through that one. I think I've seen that play where like I was full of shit presenting I've done it a bunch of times actually. I can see clearly, like early life, early 20s, even like before like teenage years, like presenting as like this wannabe rock star, like party till you pass out, like just infinite energy, all the fun things, like trash in hotel rooms, like just nonsense. And then yeah, been through a bunch of different identities that like I've been more about performing as that character in the theatre of life and getting everybody to buy into it and believe it than actually be real. And I guess now the reason why, like a big reason that like circles around all of the stuff that's coming up in this video is I've spent a lot of time taking off all of the costumes and the makeup and the masks and everything that made me into a character that in the theatre of life that I wasn't really. Like I want to go out on stage as me, like more and more, like as me as I can be, so that when other people in the theatre of life interact with me, it's real. But then the frustration is, also sometimes people are even expecting that you're in character and that you're performing a role, creating an illusion, and they can become quite surprised when that's not the case as well. Thinking in terms of theatre, because I've been doing some improv stuff like very recently and it was like heaps of fun, and theatre has just been on my mind. But it's a good analogy, isn't it? Like, we all know the theatre of life. I'm sitting in a cave by the ocean because it's raining, and it's so far from where I parked my car, and it looks like the rain is slowly getting heavier. So this is going to be a very interesting day because I can't go home before I go to work because it's too far away, and my next client I need to see rather soon. So guys, anybody who's actually understanding what I'm saying here, what have you seen in the theatre of life that's caused you to change your behaviour or contemplate how you're showing up in the world? And part of me wants to invite people to share where they see me still playing a character and not being as real as I could possibly be. But in a way, aren't we all playing a character no matter what? Because to a certain degree, you've got to create an identity, you've got to create a character to participate in the theatre of life. So if you contemplate this too deeply, you come to a point where you ask yourself, like, what even am I underneath all of the costumes and makeup and masks that make up this character that I've been embodying? Like, what's left if I just keep stripping it back, stripping it back, stripping it back? But I have a thing in my awareness right now. It's like, I think I don't want to be nothingness. I don't want to turn into like a wisp and evaporate into the light or anything like that. But I just want to be a character where it's like default. Like, there's no action or effort required to step into that role. It's just, that is how I am without any conscious, deliberate effort. Like, that's what I want to be left with. But I guess, in a way, like, that's what we're creating. Like, that's the identity that we're creating. How can I even judge somebody else who's presenting as being very present and compassionate and loving? Like, that's the identity that they've spent a long time cultivating, and that might even be their default way to show up, and it might not even feel like an illusion to them. And maybe all of this stuff that we're seeing in other people has nothing to do with them at all, and it's 100% about us and what's happening inside of us. Why do I think that it's an illusion that somebody else could be so present and compassionate and loving, whatever? Because I'm heavily traumatized and been through a lot of shit. Like, simple answers, right? But intellectualizing it and conceptualizing things doesn't really help the process of action and becoming. We've got to go through these experiences and face what's emerging. Keep contemplating. Maybe even stop contemplating. Maybe that's half my problem. Just start rolling with it a bit more. But then that would eliminate this part of the identity that I've created where I share my thoughts and feelings, because this wouldn't occur if I wasn't so contemplative. And we can't have that, because I've spent a lot of time developing this character. Just playing. There's heaviness here, there's seriousness here. I have a lot of emotions inside of me around the things that I'm describing, but yeah, as always, wouldn't take anything too seriously. This is just my video journal. It's not intended to be advice or guidance, just expressing what I'm thinking and feeling in the present moment. If you get anything out of these videos, please pass them on to anybody else you know who may benefit. Subscribe to the channel, leave your comments down below. I always love to hear what other people are thinking and feeling as well. It makes it far more interesting and less of a monologue. And check out carledge.com if you want. Have a look-see. Happy to hear your feedback on that side of things as well. See you again soon.